I hope this year goes way better than last year. Last year was so crazy. Some good things have happened, some shocking things have happened, scary things have happened, and I'm just trying to figure out life now. So in May of 2022, I took my mother to the hospital because she was having a crushing feeling in her chest. I remember this so vividly because I was so scared, and it was 2 days before my birthday. She did like a scan, and then we had to come back to follow up with the cardiologist. But basically he said, you just need to lose weight. And from there, she started taking her fitness more seriously. She was walking every day. She was eating healthy snacks. She went from around 300 to 240 pounds. And now we will fast forward to the beginning of October. So my mom has one ankle she calls the good ankle, and the other ankle she's had 3 surgeries on, and she has arthritis in her ankle. So at the beginning of October, we go to the orthopedic because the good ankle now becomes swollen and it's becoming hard to move. But the orthopedic doctor just said that that was the arthritis, and you can have fluid buildup between the legs and don't look at it seriously. And he just wrote her a prescription for some kind of a foot wrap for plantar fasciitis. So it's still early October, and my mom says that she thinks she's experiencing acid reflux, and we try to look up what things can help with acid reflux. So she tries eating a banana, eating melons. I saw something, if you try ginger tea, it should help with acid reflux. Chewing bubble gum should help with acid reflux. Google said all kinds of things. We tried all kinds of things and it wasn't getting better. So we went to an urgent care this time because we thought that they would have us in and out quicker than the hospital. And so urgent care basically said that they thought she was experiencing this because she probably was dehydrated, and they gave her IV fluids and wrote her on Densitron for acid reflux. So now we'll fast forward to the end of October. So me, I know this is my first video and you guys probably don't know me well yet, but I'm tall and I'm tiny, and I used to get picked on about my size. So I was insecure for a while, but I started embracing my size, and I'm trying to show more self-love. I got into modeling, and I got accepted for my first show ever. I got to walk in a fashion show. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry I spazzed out a little bit about the show, but I was just so excited because the year before I was working on going to different walking classes. I applied for my first show eventually then too, but unfortunately I got declined, and so I really wasn't going to even try out for this show. So I was really surprised that I even, I felt like I wasn't good enough, but she was being supportive, and she was like, no, you should go for it. She encouraged me, and I went for it, and I actually got into the show. But my mom came and she supported me, and it has me choked up a little bit because she's not feeling well herself, but she still came to support me. And we didn't know the symptoms that she was having was so serious, or her condition was so serious, because we went to the doctors earlier this year. We saw the cardiologist. He said basically just try to live a healthier life, try to lose weight, be healthy, and everything will be okay. And when we saw the orthopedic person, basically they said that was just a symptom of the arthritis. So we had no clue what was really happening at this time. So the show I got accepted for 2 shows, on Friday night and on Saturday night, but we just decided to stay the whole weekend, Thursday through Sunday. But my mother was still not feeling well, so we made sure to bring Advil, Tylenol, Tums, Pepto-Bismol, enough waters to take all these medicines at any time. You name it, we had it. We tried to be prepared as possible. At this point, I think the biggest symptoms that she experienced was having shortness of breath and feeling dizzy, definitely. Like just walking from her bed to the door would make her dizzy. I wanted to take her to the hospital while we were there, but she just preferred that we went to the hospital back in our city. We didn't live too far away from the city that it was held in. It's still a few hours, but she just felt more comfortable being in our hometown where more of our relatives live. And also, by the time the show let out, it was dark outside and it was a foggy night, and she just felt uncomfortable with me driving us in those conditions. So when we get back to the house, at the house, it's my grandmother and one of my aunts. As soon as I park, immediately they come to the car, they help her out, and they tend to her and they help her into the house because she's still having shortness of breath. And they're getting ready. It looked like they were almost done getting ready, so my mother wanted to give them time because she and I both thought that we were all gonna ride down to the hospital together. After they finished getting ready, they told us that they were about to leave, and we were like, you're leaving? Where are you leaving to? And they told us that my grandmother had a dentist appointment that they were going to. So they went to that, and me and my mom went to the hospital. So we went to the same hospital that we went to go to the cardiologist appointment, but it was different this time. Those times I could go in with her. This time they weren't allowing any extra people in. So she had to go in. I gave her cards, and I just waited in the car. So I'm waiting in the car, and time's just flying by. To pass the time, I'm just on my phone, and when a closer park opens up, I just move my car into that park, and this goes on for some hours, but I start to get hungry. Eventually, one of my aunts calls me and asks for an update on my mother. I told her at the moment I didn't have an update, and they weren't letting extra people in at the time, so I wasn't really sure what was happening. But when I dropped her off, there was an option to put a contact number down, and I gave the people my number. So she calls me back moments later and says that she called the hospital directly, asked for an update on my mom because some hours have passed by, and she basically told me that I can leave. She won't be released that night. If I wanted to come over there, I could come over there. All of this happened on Halloween, so my plan was to get some food first, and I have 2 friends that actually live in my state, and 1 friend that went to school out of state, but she's just an hour away. But I was just gonna see what they were doing. So I'm trying to find out what my friends are doing. I couldn't get in contact with the 2 that actually live in my city, but I got in contact with the one that went to school out of state, and I was planning to go up there after I got my to-go food. I was like, hey, well, I guess we can spend Halloween together. So I picked up my food. I'm eating in the car. I'm on the phone with my friend that lives an hour away. I'm telling her everything that happened today. And it's really good that I picked somewhere that was close by, because I actually got a call from my mother, and she sounds like she is on a lot of medication. But she basically told me that she had some blood clots on her lungs that they pulled off, and they would allow me to go see her. So I'm so grateful that I was not like in mid-route upstate to go visit my friend. So I told my friend, she was on the other line, I told her, hey, you know, I got a call from my mom. I gotta go call my mom back. Gotta figure out where my mom's at. I gotta get to my mom. So when I get to the hospital, they're trying to give me a hard time about going to see my mom since they weren't letting people in earlier. But luckily, the nurse gave me her name and told me to tell them to refer to her when I get there. I did that, and I was able to go see my mom. When I got to my mom, she was in the hallway on a hospital bed. She had a lot of tubes in her. She had oxygen in her nose, but the weirdest thing happened. They were saying how she had blood clots that travel from her legs to her lungs, and as they're explaining this stuff, I feel like I have to crap out of nowhere. I'm sorry if that's TMI, but I felt like I had to crap, and then my hearing starts to become muffled, like as if, like when you're underwater and you hear the sound above the water, or people screaming, or, you know, however they are at the pool. My hearing starts to go out, and I'm just so confused. Like I start panicking, and it's like, but I know that, you know, something bigger is going on. So like, it's like, I don't want to say anything, but at the same time, I'm like thinking like, am I gonna pass out? Like, I don't know what to think, because I've never felt like that before. I was thinking like, you know, I just had that food, that to-go food. I was like, did they drug me or something? Because that tea that I had, it did not taste normal. It was nasty. The tea was nasty. The food was good, but I was like, did they do something to my food or something? Because like, this is weird. I've never felt like that before. But I'm trying to keep it together, and it goes away eventually, but that was just so strange to me. But we stayed at this first hospital for days. Luckily, they let me stay with her the entire time. My aunt and my grandma would come, and they would bring me change of clothes. They had a shower in the room. So we had 2 hospitalists, but I felt like they were both not very vocal. One of them did come to the room every day, and she would say, you have cancer, and then she'd smile afterwards, and it would be so weird. My mother and I would look at each other, and we have so many questions, and it was just weird. But one thing my mother would say is, you know, how do you make this diagnosis, and I haven't even had a biopsy yet. But even before we had the biopsy, she was like, you have cancer. I'm trying to think about all the different procedures that she got done here. They did do the biopsy and said that she had cancer. They did the procedure where they took the blood clots off her lungs. She said they looked like 20 red eggs. They did a procedure where they put a stent in both her left and her right leg to help with the blood flow. They did a scan too that showed that she had 2 big fibroids, and one was crushing a vein that was going to cause problems. And honestly, like, I'm just flipping the freak out. Like, I don't even know. I'm feeling a billion different ways at one time. I don't know what to think, what to do. I'm trying to think about backup hospitals, and I don't even know doctors around me, hospitals around me. Like, I'm asking all of my social media platforms, I'm writing, hey, can you suggest me good hospitals and doctors to see? And I just don't know what to do. And then every 2 hours somebody is coming in and they're taking her blood. But this is a teaching hospital too, so not everybody is the best at doing that. And they're like, whoops, we're blowing veins. They don't care. They just keep coming back and taking her blood, and she has all these bruises on her arms. I just feel like people weren't being as gentle as they could have been. There was a lack of compassion, and it just seemed to be a really insensitive experience. On one occasion, they wanted to do some type of imaging, so they had her get inside of an MRI machine. She said it was very hot. She was pouring sweat when she got out of there. It's very claustrophobic in there. And she said whoever was doing it was like, oh, sorry, I forgot to turn on the fan. Even directly after she had her biopsy, a lady and her students came in, and she was like, she got the okie doke from the hospitalist that she could come in with the students and do like an ultrasound of her chest. And it just felt really insensitive. This, like, ask us first. She literally just had a biopsy, and it just felt like, oh, now this is going to be a show and tell moment. Ask if she's comfortable with doing this right now. And like I was saying, while all this is happening, I'm trying to confide in my social media because it's just all so much at once. It's so unexpected. I've never been through any of this before. It's scary. I was scared. I've never been as scared as I was then ever in my life. I just knew some serious stuff was happening to my favorite girl in the world, and I just felt really desperate. So that's why I turned to social media, because I'm not one to like really put my business out there, but I felt like it could have been a knowledgeable moment, because maybe somebody could suggest good doctors, good hospitals, somebody more knowledgeable, somebody has actually been through this stuff before with a family member or anything. And it's like you're getting told all this stuff out of nowhere, and life is just happening, and you're not in control of anything. That is just so scary, especially to somebody so important to you. I just knew I wanted to be there for her any way that I could. But when you put your stuff out there, you don't know how that's gonna go. Some people genuinely care. Some people may be more knowledgeable about the situation and want to help in some kind of way. Even prayers meant a lot to me. It's just some people might not care at all too. They're just watching your stories just to see what happens next, like your life is some kind of soap opera. And not everybody thinks positively when it comes to getting a cancer diagnosis. I for sure knew that it was a necessity that I surround myself with positive people that are hoping and wishing the best outcome for me and my family. You really have to protect your peace and your mental. Everything is already heavy as is. That's why sometimes it's just better to step away from social media and have your genuine friends around you. But another thing that I'm really grateful for that I found really helpful through all of this was joining Facebook groups. I joined a Facebook group for pancreatic cancer, and it's been life-changing. It's such a relief to have somebody to talk to. We give each other tips and advice. We uplift each other. It's just been really nice having another resource and having some kind of guidance. So we're now near the last few days of being at this first hospital that we went to. They pulled the big blood clots off her lungs, and she's been put on oxygen to help her with her breathing. They put her on heparin, which is a blood thinner, to help with the smaller blood clots that was still in her lungs and in her legs, and she's been on heparin for weeks now. There was something going on with her iron, so they gave her a blood transfusion, and they said that she was also anemic. She's still getting her blood taken every 2 hours, but the last few days the nurses have had more trouble than usual getting her blood. They've either said that they weren't able to get it at all, or when they do it, it's now coming out clumpy. But I was really curious as to why it's coming out clumpy now, because she just had a transfusion with fresh blood. And I also noticed that both of her legs are bigger than usual, but one of them is even huger than the other one. They just said she needed to get up and walk around more, and assigned her an at-home nurse, an at-home physical therapist, an OBGYN, an oncologist. They put her on 2 different blood thinning pills. They put her on an iron pill and a blood pressure medicine and discharged us. So we have been home for 2 days now, and my mother has been taking all the medicines that they prescribed her at the times they prescribed her to take them. But I'm starting to notice that not only is her legs big, but one of them, the biggest one, is starting to become hard, and I'm concerned. Luckily, we got a call from the at-home nurse, and she said that she was coming over that day. She comes over, and I tell her about the leg. She feels the leg, but she says don't worry about it. It's just because my mom needs to move around more, and just go to our upcoming doctor's appointment, and she'll be fine. I know what she said, but something still didn't sit right with me. So I called the pharmacy that we picked up the medications from. I tell the pharmacist everything that happened. I told her what the nurse said. I told her that my mom had put on these 2 blood thinners, but her leg is hard. She puts me on hold and she transfers me to a guy. I don't know if the guy was her manager, but I'm assuming that he's some kind of pharmacist too. He asked me what happened. I tell him what happens. He says, is it warm? I said, yeah, it's warm. And he said, I don't want to alarm you right now, but I will go to the hospital right now. So I told my mother what the pharmacist said, but with being in the hospital already for 2 weeks, she's only been home for 2 days. She's dreading the idea of going back to the hospital, especially with the at-home nurse saying don't worry about it, and she already had an upcoming appointment. She was going to wait until her appointment, but I convinced her that we should go to the hospital. I'm researching different hospitals to take her to, but all the hospitals around me has low reviews, low ratings. I'm going through the different reviews, so I just decided to ask around. I get a hold of one of my friends that live by me. I remember her mom was in a hospital not too long ago, and I think she had a good experience. Her mother told us that she loved the hospital that she was at. They had really nice food, the people were really nice, and she even went back to get her knee surgery there. That friend of mine also has a daughter. Her daughter is 2 now, but she said her daughter was born in that hospital and she loved the treatment while she was there as well. I told the friend's mother everything that we've been through so far, and she was like, yeah, these people are really smart. These people are really good. This would probably be the best place to get a second opinion from and let them take over everything that's happening right now. So as soon as we get to the second hospital, the front desk lady seems rude. We told her some background information, how we just left the other hospital, how my mother's legs started to get hard, and I told her my mother had stents placed in both of her legs. And the lady tried to argue with me, was it the left one or the right one? Because she said you can't have stents placed in both of your legs. Luckily, the person that wheeled her away was nice though, and my mother said when they wheeled her away, they just took her vitals. So that's her blood pressure, her temperature, and her weight. Shortly after they took her vitals, they wheeled her back next to me. We waited for them to call her name again, and luckily they let me go back with her this time. They did some type of test on her, and then they gave her a shot called Lovenox or Lovenox. We were really hoping to get a second opinion at this hospital, but what they ended up doing was calling the first hospital and just going off of their notes. So there was a part of this process where I could not be in the room, but I got my mother's perspective, and I'll tell y'all how she felt and everything that went down. So my mother said that the emergency room was traumatic because they had to put IVs in her. So there was a part of the process where they were taking her to different imaging rooms to do scans, and she had to be held down by 3 or 4 different people. And then on top of that, she said when they tried to put the IVs in to do her imaging, the hospital workers would curse because they said they just blew her veins. And it happened multiple times, and it was hard to find a good vein, so she just experienced a lot of pain. And she said before we went to the ICU, the people in the ICU were complaining about the people in the emergency room sticking IVs in the creases of people's arms, and it was hard for her to move or lay a certain way because it's basically having glass in the creases of both of your arms. So I'm back in the room, and it's just me and her and a variety of doctors coming after a while. Somebody announces that she has stage 4 cancer, asks if she has a living will, and I just start crying, and she's comforting me. The first hospital didn't give a lot of detail. We knew that she had masses in her pancreas and in her liver, but we didn't know what stage she was at. A doctor even came in and he was like, I don't know why they didn't give you more information. She was then admitted into the second hospital. At this hospital, she kept it on Disney Channel the entire time, trying to calm her mind. I was nervous that they wouldn't let me stay with her overnight like the other one did, but luckily I was able to stay with her the entire time. Our time here, she was in 2 different areas of the hospital. We started off in the ICU, then we got transferred to the oncology floor. At this hospital, we learned that my mother had HIT, which is heparin-induced thrombocythemia. They explained that heparin is a blood thinner, but when she gets heparin, it would make her body produce more blood clots instead of thinning it, so she would have to list it as an allergy going forward. And they explained that her leg was getting hard because one of the blood thinners at the first hospital discharged her on was actually a form of heparin, so it's really good that we came to the hospital this night. They were a lot nicer on the ICU floor, but my overall experience here, I felt like there were many moments where I was talked at instead of spoken to. There were moments when nurses and doctors came in and I felt like I was invisible when I spoke. I'd ask questions and they wouldn't even make eye contact with me. I felt like they were blatantly displaying that. They weren't even discreet about it. Even with the nurses, some of them were very successful at drawing blood and they would get it within the first stick. So they said using some type of little heating bag and feeling for the vein before sticking it has been really helpful. So I tried to pass that advice along if somebody was really struggling with getting blood, because so many people were like, oops, I just blew her vein again. And they'd either send somebody else to try or they would just keep trying and they wouldn't get it. And they'd be quick to tell me they know what they're doing and they just gave off a stay out of it kind of vibe. I even remember some girl telling me that I could step out the room while she does it. And I even remember asking somebody, how long does it take veins to grow back? And they said sometimes they don't. And I just remember feeling freaked out and upset, you know? It just seemed that they were so careless and desensitized to the possible long-term effect of blowing veins. Like, wouldn't you be more cautious if there's a chance they might not grow back at all? But people seem to not care since it's not their arm, right? And it's not happening to their loved ones. They weren't coming in as much as the first hospital, but it was something daily still and throughout the day. As we were in the ICU, the IVs that were put in my mom's arm in the emergency room worked, but only temporarily because eventually she developed clots in that arm. At the time, they talked about putting a PICC line in, but it wasn't done until later on. There were times when she asked to use the bedpan and they'd bring it to her with old pee still in it. And they weren't really cleaning her well when she needed assistance. She would still have poop on her and smell like poop after they cleaned her. And eventually I stepped in because I didn't want her to feel sore or have sores on her bottom. But honestly, you should clean somebody else like you clean yourself. Or you should clean somebody's mama like you clean your own mama. You're in the hospital because you need somebody's help the most. And I'm pretty sure if they were in the hospital and they needed somebody's help the most, they wouldn't want somebody to clean them like that. But there was this one guy that actually took the time to try to clean her, and that meant the world to her. So my family started calling the hospital more to get updates on my mom, and they requested to have a family meeting with the doctor so they can get more information on my mother. That's when the ICU manager came in and asked my mother, is that what she wants to do? And my mother said, sure. Within minutes of this, the nurse at the time came in. She told my mother that she has to switch floors. She starts throwing our belongings into a bag really quickly. And then she starts putting our belongings onto a cart, but she seems really upset since we didn't even get a chance to pack up our own belongings. It felt more like we were getting kicked out. And literally like the day before, she told us that we'd probably stay in that area for a day or two more and then we'd probably get discharged. So I asked her why we were moving floors when we were so close to discharge, and they said that we'd stay in this area for a day or two more, then we could go home. And she said because she has cancer. So she continued to pack up our belongings quickly, and eventually she started putting them on the bed with my mom, and she called somebody to wheel us to the oncology building. So we were transferred from the ICU to the oncology building, and visually, these rooms were not as nice. They were smaller and looked older, but the treatment here was worse as well. The first nurse technician that we met here said that she worked here because she liked being in other people's business, and she liked to look through people's files and find out how did they get here and what do they have going on. She mentioned that her mother passed from cancer, and she told my mom, at least you know how you're gonna die. I don't know how I'm gonna die. So my mother was trying to comfort me, and she said even with stage 4 cancer, some people still live many years. And the nurse technician told her to stop. And she said many people on this floor wish that they were in her shoes right now, and she should be lucky. Like, she was complaining, but all she was doing was trying to comfort me. After that, we just stopped pressing the nurse help button as much as possible. And I'm really sorry for what happened to her mother, but to wish that on somebody else is just horrible. After meeting her, we just asked for help a lot less than we needed. We were afraid of getting her assistance. Since we switched floors, we didn't know how long we'd be in the hospital, what's the new plan, who we'd have each day or night that we were still there. But even when we found out that we did not have her, naturally on this floor, they weren't helping my mom to the bathroom or assisting to wash her. It didn't matter as much because I was helping her, but it's awful to think about the people that don't have family visiting them as much if they're not getting the help that they need. One of the nights that we were there, we even heard a woman somewhere on the floor just screaming and cursing for help, and it was just sad and scary. On this floor, there were a few nice nurses, but I still experienced feeling invisible by some of the doctors and nurses that came in. To everybody that entered the room, she introduced me as her daughter, but I feel like maybe it was an age discrimination thing because I looked so young. They felt like maybe they didn't have to answer my questions. I will say it does feel like you're not getting respected when you don't have your questions answered, or at least get eye contact, but it was even worse when she was heavily on medications. There was this one experience where this nurse came in and she gave my mom some medications that had her to the point to where she could barely keep her eyes open. She was slurring her words. I asked the nurse what did she give her, and she just turned to my mother and she said, "Are you sleepy?" My mother nodded her head and she fell asleep, and the nurse just said she's sleepy and left. But I asked her a direct question and she did not answer it. But yeah, being an advocate for somebody and being really young or looking really young can be very challenging. It can be difficult, but hang in there. Keep trying to learn as much as you can. Keep trying to do as much as you can. Do not let anybody discourage you. You're doing a wonderful job. And I'm proud of you if you're in my shoes and you're doing this as well. And even if you're not, even if you're just being an advocate in general, your family member is very blessed to have you as a team member and advocating for them, and they need us the most right now. And I just want to encourage everybody because it can be hard sometimes. They really try to tear you down sometimes, but y'all hang in there. We got this. But yeah, the physical therapist there was very rude too. The day after my mother just got a bigger stent put in her leg, she was trying to call my mom lazy for having trouble with movement and not being able to walk as far. But she was in pain and she did still try. But there was this one doctor that came in and he actually prayed for my mom. He He prayed that he'd be able to help her before he did surgery on her, and that was the most sincere thing, especially after coming across some unkind people while we were here. Near the last few days of being at this hospital, they wanted to give my mother a port so she could receive chemotherapy. Because she had the blood clots in her chest from the hit, they decided to put something called a midline in her arm instead. But unfortunately, it wasn't until after they already put the midline in, the oncologist said that the midline would not be deep enough in her body to receive chemo from. So they decided to remove the midline out of her arm and place a PICC line there instead. And they mentioned that they could draw blood from the PICC line instead of keep poking her with needles, but they never ended up using the PICC line for the rest of the stay in the hospital. Luckily, we were able to go home the day before Thanksgiving. When we got home, somebody from her insurance company messaged her, "Make lots of memories with your family." This rubbed me the exact same way that nurse at the hospital rubbed me. It sounds like she's saying, "Make your final memories." I felt like she could have just said happy holidays if she felt the need to say something related to Thanksgiving. Everybody saying these things aren't God. They don't know our fate or how long we have on this earth. And why try to plant that seed in somebody's head from the start of their journey? It's only the beginning. If there was a time in life when somebody needed uplifting the most, getting an unexpected cancer diagnosis would definitely be that time. Especially if they're choosing to fight, you should pour motivation into somebody instead. On our next visit from a home health nurse, we explained our whole hospital experience, and she said it was really good that we went to the hospital because if a blood clot travels from your legs to your lungs, it could actually cause a heart attack or a stroke. And she said she personally had an experience with somebody that went through that at the hospital, and by the time she went to go get that person help, they died. But we also learned that people usually get this if it runs in the family, which it doesn't. And there's a higher chance of people getting it if they smoke or they drank. And my mother does neither, and she's never did neither. So we really don't know where this came from. It all feels very unexpected and out of nowhere. It feels like a bad dream you're waiting to wake up from and being in a state of constant shock. It makes me really sad that she's going through this because she's literally one of the nicest people in the whole wide world. She has such a big heart. She's always helping people. And she's always been such an amazing mother. She's always shown me and anybody that she's ever crossed paths with nothing but love and kindness. No matter how old I get, I always felt love. I just feel so blessed to have her as my mother, and none of this stuff that's been going on even feels like real life. This is definitely the most intense thing I've ever been through in my whole entire life, but we're gonna try our best to learn as much as we can, and I'm gonna try my best to help out as much as possible. So much has happened since then, and I'll be sharing our experience on this page. Maybe it can help somebody else out, and just hearing your feedback and advice to me will be helpful as well. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will be uploading again really soon. Thank you for watching.